Down that way, you can barely see it, is the Colorado River. And today I'm in Yuma, Arizona. It's windy out here. A little chilly, but it's supposed to be in like 72 today, so not too bad. And I'm gonna do this Territorial Museum here, so opens up in a few minutes here, so we'll go check that out. This was founded in or built in 1876, and some of the prisoners helped build it. And it looks like it's made out of all stone and all that. I visited here years ago, but I thought I would visit again since I'm right down in the neighborhood. So let's go check it out. Well, there's the rules. Every prison has rules. And then the hours there, park entrance. So let's go see what we can see. I don't think it's a big museum, but it was quite interesting. And I think they give you a little tour. And it's got like a park associated with it here that's along the Colorado River there. So see the river a little bit better here. I'll see if I can get over and get a view. The wind is blowing. I hope my mic muff is blocking some of it. Oh yeah, there's the river down there. Looks like some people down there doing something. Going on a nature walk, I guess. There's the river. There's the door. Let's go in. So this is where you start off. Gift shop here. Looks like a well-stocked, t-shirts and whatnot.
Where you go?
Oh, that's interesting. The water came up from the Colorado River. They pumped it up here to a water tank that was made out of rock. So, and there it is. Get the sun out of the picture here might help. There we go. I got some tall palm trees here. Very healthy looking. Well, here's the prison entrance. So we'll pop in here and see what we can see.
We've got this awesome scale model, and it really gives us a good idea of what the prison was like when it was fully built out back in the, let's just say around the turn of the century. It would have been fully built out. You can see how that compares. That is an actual photograph there.
Oh, down there, yeah.
But this is what you would have had. And we're in this building. Our museum is in this building here. Back in the day, that would have been the dining hall. This would have been the dining hall.
Okay.
And then we've got the cell block out there. But I like to explain to people that, we're considered one of the more haunted destinations in the United States.
Really?
Yeah, I think part of that is, part of it is we had 120 prisoners die here over the years, or 112 prisoners die here over the years, and 104 of them are still here in the prison cemetery.
Wow.
But really, what we have today is we're kind of a ghost of what we once were. The whole prison is a ghost.
So how many of those died were executed?
None.
Oh, none?
No.
Oh, they didn't have.
Executions were not done here.
Oh, I see.
We did have a prisoner where we had 2 convicted murderers were in the same cell, and I guess one had to figure out who was the meanest or whatever, and he killed the other guy.
Oh, really?
Ended up standing trial with the Yuma County, because this murder, although it was committed in the prison, was committed in Yuma County. So stood trial in Yuma County, was convicted and sentenced to hang, and then the hanging was conducted in town in an area near the courthouse. Now that area where those gallows were set up was also inside of the school.
Oh, really?
And the teacher the kids were paying way too much interest in this, and
Yeah, they couldn't.
she was concerned that this was going to like really harm their kids
Yeah.
seeing it. So she ended classes early for the day and sent them home.
They're probably a wise decision.
Of course, then they came back with their parents that
Right.
wanted
Yeah.
them to see the hanging.
The spectacle, yeah.
Because those were things that were community happenings for the time.
Yeah.
Drew people in. I mean, it was well publicized. There was going to be hanging. People came in from all over the place. I don't know if it was like their version of watching an R-rated movie with violence or something, but that would happen. And it wasn't until later on that the change came from being the communities did the executions to they got moved to prisons. State prisons are, I think that's pretty universal. That's
Right.
in there now. But yeah, we didn't do them here, and that's a common misunderstanding that was happening.
Yeah.
Now we did have 8 prisoners that did die of gunshot wounds in the process of conducting escapes.
Oh, okay.
But
So they were kind of executed or escaping. Yeah,
they were
something like that.
well, like in the Gates riot. When they did escapes, sometimes they had overpowered guards and then armed themselves, and sometimes they were just escaping from work details or something like that. There were 138 escape attempts over the years, and the prison was only open for 33 years. But of those 138 attempts, only 26 were considered successful, and of those 26, only 2 were from inside the prison. The rest were from work details or maybe trustees that were sent in on business and didn't come back. But really the definition of escape is that they're no longer here and nobody ever found their bodies. And they never showed up someplace else.
Because it was just all
So-
desert around here at that time.
We're in the
Harsh.
middle of the Sonora
Yeah,
Desert.
right.
That kind of was something that was, the prisoners were explained that, you're in the middle of the Sonora Desert. Where are you going to go from here?
Yeah. Without some water and a horse or something. Yeah.
Yeah, you're probably going to be stealing something, and,
Yeah.
And that was the attempt. Of course, then we had native trackers, particularly the Apache, were really good at that.
Oh, really? Huh.
They were given a bounty on bringing them back. They could bring them back dead or alive.
Yeah.
But, well, let's see. I think it was a really good business decision because most of them were brought back alive. You think about it, they got, I think the amount was like $50, and that was a large sum of money.
Yeah.
You bring them back dead, you get $50. You bring them back alive, maybe they'll escape again.
You double your income there.
It was a good business decision.
Right.
Yeah. The prison. Let's wander over here a little bit.
Okay. I'll follow you.
There's 2 ways to look at the prison. If you're inside, if you're one of our prisoners, we've gotten that reputation of being a hellhole. If you're, the heat, the river, the quicksand, the number one cause of death here was tuberculosis. And
Wow.
most deaths here weren't due to people think, oh, how did anybody even live through a few days in the heat? The same way everybody else lived in the West at that time. We didn't have air conditioning. We didn't have. You did the work.
Take a swim in the river or whatever.
Yeah.
Keep cool.
Particularly, we get questions. We get a lot of. We do get a lot of European guests, and they'll ask about that. And then we'll point out, the city was here before the prison was. And they'll say, well, yeah, but the prisoners are working, they're hard labor. Well, if you weren't working in town, you weren't eating. Pretty simple. And you were doing the same kind of work. You were doing construction work. You were doing farming. You were doing stuff. And, when you think of being sentenced to hard labor as breaking rocks.
Yeah.
Well, you'll see in our main cell block. Well, yeah, they did do a lot of breaking rocks here. We had a quarry. This whole prison sits on a granite
Granite.
cliff. And so the granite for building the prison was quarried right here, making littler rocks from big rocks. So yeah, if you're a prisoner here, this is a horrible place. But, you know, if you lived in town and you were looking up at this, the 18-foot high plastered and whitewashed adobe walls, and by the 1880s, we had electricity here. So we had electric lights, and
That
we
early,
had
wow.
powered ventilation, not air conditioning, but
Yeah.
we had powered ventilation, air movement through the
Wow.
cells. We had, you probably saw the watchtower out there, the big guard tower, the main guard tower. That actually started out, that's the cover for 80,000-gallon water tank.
I was reading about that.
We had running water here before
Wow.
you had running water in town,
Wow.
which meant, well, the first flush toilets in the area were up here. The prisoners didn't have those. They had a setup where it was running water through a 7-hole, I think they called it a Parsons toilet. I don't know why they called it that. But we had a library that was one of the prison superintendent's wives. And our prison superintendent's wives had a lot of influence here at the prison, and particularly on prison reform. That library wasn't just the first library in the prison, it was the first library in the territory.
Wow.
And along with that, and the books that were there, classes were taught in reading, writing, math, English, Spanish, and German were all taught here at the prison. The prisoners weren't forced to learn, but they had the opportunity to. And, you know, as you go through, although it looks like, oh, this is really tough conditions, the purpose was to rehabilitate and to give them potential skills. Everybody had to have a job. And that might be on the prison work farm, that might be building the walls. And this prison was built by the prisoners. And they learned a lot of stuff by it. We had a tailor shop. Our prison uniforms were made here. We had a cobbler shop. Their shoes were made here. The blacksmith shop. There was so much that they had to have the opportunity to learn skills. And if all they could do is break rocks and that's all they wanted to do, well, they got to do that too. Example, some of the things that our prisoners would have had issued, and also a particularly interesting one is that this is a sample menu.
Okay.
And it's not what you would think when it comes down to what the prisoners are eating. They're actually eating quite well.
Yeah.
And especially since a lot of the products
Beef stew,
have been taken care of, either raised here or livestock that was raised here.
Yeah.
The our most serious punishment, it's sometimes called the hellhole, but we call it the dark cell.
The hell.
And you'll be able to go back out in there, and really there's a section of the prison where the cells or the rooms are really just caves. They've been dug into a caliche or clay mountain. And in the case of the dark cell, it was really a cave with a cage inside it. And that's where you were sentenced for punishment. And it wasn't a case of like popular culture might have the, whippings or beatings or stuff like that. That wasn't allowed here. But in pitch black, the only contact you had was, maybe this vent hole. There might be some light come down there.
Wow.
Prisoners were often put there, and they're stripped down to their underwear. They were fed bread and water, and that was the punishment. You're in there in the dark by yourself. Now there are stories about prison guards dropping critters down through the vent hole.
Torture people.
But, that's never been proven, and the fact remains, this is like the top of a hill, and we got plenty of critters that would get down there naturally.
Oh, that makes sense. If it didn't have a screen over it, yeah.
Today, our most common visitors, although, get some pretty decent-sized lizards wander through there from time to time. but bats.
Oh,
are,
bad.
are one of our most common visitors.
Oh,
Sometimes we've got a colony of 30 to 40 bats hanging from the ceiling.
wow.
So that's the only more permanent residence there now. From the Colorado.
Oh, okay.
And when they did that, that came through and cut off a good chunk of the prison.
Oh, I see.
Knocked down all those walls, a lot of the buildings, the superintendent's quarters, all that. And once those walls are down and adobe does not weather well if it's not kept up,
Right.
the decay just kept on going. And you had hobos off of the trains that would come in. That's where this fire and this fire,
Oh,
they'd start fires, cooking fires, campfires. Those don't work well on wood floors.
no. Not too
So
bad.
that's where most of that has gone away. A couple of interesting things.
You want to include these people in the tour? Because
Well,
I could wait and they catch up.
no, they'll just
Oh, okay.
yeah. A couple of interesting things here. We're one of the first prisons that used photography to identify the prisoners,
Oh, yeah.
and as was always a concern, probably not so much these days, but it was always the concern then was the cost. Photography was an expensive thing in the 1870s, and it was often for just the wealthy. Well, now we're taking pictures of our prisoners. Well, the standard when you think of the mug shot, full face and that profile, well, they came up with this. And the prisoner would get one picture. Well, that one picture with this mirror device would give you a
Give them the
full
profile.
face and
Ah,
profile
that's a good
all
idea.
at one time,
Yeah, neat.
saving the taxpayers
Oh,
money.
yeah, good.
So
That's neat.
and that actually was used. There was an event where a fellow that had served time here had committed another crime up in like it was Oregon or Washington, and he had well somebody had been captured, and they were holding him because well we know who you are, and he goes, that's not me. And they said, you know what? He served time in Yuma. So they sent for the picture,
picture.
got it up there. By this time, this poor fellow had been serving like about 6 months. They looked at the picture of who they were looking for. They looked at him. Well, we're sorry, sir. You
Oh,
can go
really?
now. So it did rescue at least one
Yeah,
person.
yeah, there you go. Got him out of the deal.
You can see this is uh, kind of dedicated to our female prisoners.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, we did have some notable characters that were involved in some pretty crazy stuff. Our most famous prisoner was Pearl Hart.
Yeah.
Not as common a name as used to be, but uh, if you remember the old West shows, like in the 50s and 60s,
Oh, yeah.
Death Valley days,
Gunsmoke, all those, yeah.
Gunsmoke, Tales of Wells Fargo,
Yeah.
all those old ones like that. You'd see Pearl Hart show up from time to time.
Really?
But she was always portrayed as like
Oh, I didn't.
like the Al Capone of the West, the
Oh.
bandit queen of the West. Pearl, bless her heart, she was born and raised in Canada and came out west. Her illustrious career was not very illustrious. She hooked up with this guy named Joe Boot. They rolled drunks pretty much for. She cute little girl. She'd attract them to her room. They knock them out. They take them there, take for their money.
Sounds like a lovely lady.
But ultimately, they came up with, well, we're going to rob a stagecoach. That's where the money is.
Oh, she wanted the big money.
Well, once upon a time, yeah, there was. But by the time they got around to robbing the stagecoach, it's turn of the century. There was the last stagecoach running in Arizona.
Oh,
It was
no.
up in the Globe, Florence, Miami area. Well, they did their stagecoach robbery. Pearl dressed like a guy to do this, which kind of endeared her to history. They pulled off the robbery. Things didn't go well. They kind of got lost in the dark in their escape, circled around. The next morning when they woke up, the posse had them.
Oh, really?
In they came. Joe went to trial, immediately found guilty, sentenced to 30 years up here at
Wow.
Territorial Prison. Pearl, on the other hand, she actually talked her way out of jail and escaped once, got arrested over in, I think they found her in either Lordsburg or Deming over in New Mexico, brought her back. And then she went to trial for the stagecoach robbery, but she got acquitted. Pretty girl, jury.
Right.
They couldn't. They acquitted her. Well, the judge was hopping mad about that. You can't avoid the law because she's a cute girl.
Right.
So they looked it over and they go, when she was doing that robbery, she personally took the guard's gun. So they brought her back in and charged her with theft of the gun. And the new jury that brought in was told, hey, you got to obey the law or you're going to be serving her sentence for her. She was found guilty. She was sentenced to 5 years up here. And by that time, nationwide publicity. For the time, I mean, this is all newspaper stuff. They did. She was really famous. She got up here and Cosmopolitan magazine did a series of articles on her and her exploits in the
Really?
West. She had no exploits in the West. So, much like today, the media made it up.
Right, there you go.
She became much more famous. People were lining up to interview her and get their pictures taken.
Kind of a Bonnie and Clyde story almost.
And, and as a result, she was a real pain up here. And eventually the superintendent requested a pardon for her, and it was granted. The governor granted a pardon with the exception that she never returned to Arizona.
Oh.
Pearl was more than happy to do that. She went to Kansas City to be an actress, where she had a job offer to recreate her exploits on the stage.
Taking advantage of everything.
Yeah, but Pearl wasn't any better an actress than she was a stagecoach robber. She got booed off the stage.
Oh, really?
Kind of disappeared. Different stories, but one of the more solid ones is she actually violated her pardon, came back to Arizona, married a rancher, and lived out the rest of her life here, dying in 1956.
Wow. The notorious Pearl.
And her guy.
Right.
We do have a pretty significant connection to Tombstone.
Oh, really?
A lot of folks, familiar names, the Earps and some of these guys from the real bad days, Pete Spence. Even if you remember the movie Tombstone, that sheriff that caused Wyatt Earp a lot of trouble, Johnny B. Hand.
Yeah.
Johnny ended up prison superintendent here for a couple of years.
Oh, he did.
He wasn't a great superintendent, and he got the job because one of our best superintendents, Superintendent Gates, was severely injured in a prison escape attempt and wasn't able to resume his duties. So Johnny got the job for a couple of years. But some other folks here, Buckskin Frank Leslie served time here. He committed a murder, but while he was here, he served as a assistant in the hospital and helped with the doctor through a number of different things. So where he ultimately got a pardon, thanks to folks like Wyatt Earp and some other military personnel that wrote letters of recommendation.
Oh, right.
So he did get a pardon here. He served a number of years, but he did eventually get a pardon.
Cool.
So let's see. How are we? I got. Police officer in the city for 26 years. Then I retired, and then I joined the fire department. I was with the fire department for another 17 years. And
you went from police to fire?
Yes.
Oh, that's weird.
It is. It is. Usually when that comes up in discussion, the term dark side usually comes up as to whether I came from or went to the dark side. I've been a police lieutenant too, so when I went over to the fire department, the firefighters got a kick out of the police officers, yes sir, no sir to me, and it's like, yeah. Anyhow, but yeah, I've been retired for a couple of years now, and a little over a year ago, I got a call and they said, well, you want to do something out here at the prison? And it's like, ah, sounds like fun. So Wednesdays, I manage, hang out in the museum and give tours. So anyhow, oh, okay. Over here, depending what part of the country you're from, you're either going to be having the granite
Shot the man holding case at
around
gunpoint.
so you can look at it and see and then those bars would have been plastered over and whitewashed. So all this all would have been just a white wall. Inside would have been a nice white wall, all roofs over. This would have been very clean and sanitary. Now, when they started having people in here and tours, this place looked horrible. It was just piles of plaster, things were falling down, and they could have gone and replastered it and whitewashed it, but without a roof over it, that stuff would be falling down all the time, and we don't want it falling down on folks. Yeah. So they took all the plaster off. To me, I think it's better, because if you look at this, each one of those blocks, and this isn't just something on front, this goes way back. This is all solid granite blocks that have been put in here. So you get an idea of the work that was done. And it allows you, I like to say, to get in touch with history. If you pick up one of these blocks here, and realize when you're touching it, really very few people have touched that since somebody almost 150 years ago put that in place. So you're literally getting in touch with history. And I know there are some places they go, don't touch the stuff. You can touch our granite blocks. It's okay. 150 years of weather hasn't hurt them. They're good. They're good. But you're getting in touch with history there. Now, some of our cells might talk to you as we go along. And keep in mind, these are prisoners. They're probably lying. Okay. A little farther on, you can go in. There's one of the cells on this side you can take a look at. One of the cells on the other side, and the central block here, which is built a little later, that's 2 6-person cells end on end with bars in between it. So let's go ahead and wander a little bit. If you're familiar with John Wayne, that cell there gets called the John Wayne cell. And that's because after the prison was abandoned, Hollywood had a free set. And a lot of different things were shot here. It wasn't always portrayed as a territorial prison. In this case, John Wayne and a couple other actors were part of a series of movies called the Three Musketeers. And in this one, they were French foreign legionnaires. And, tough bunch, but they were stuck in a North African prison colony. And so the Yuma Territorial Prison was portrayed as a North African prison. And John got his picture taken in that cell. So we call it the John Wayne cell, and gives us a chance to explain a little bit about that kind of our history. I know we're probably most famous connected with the movie 310 to Yuma. And there's 2 versions of that. There's an early version, like the Glenn Ford version, and then there's a Russell Crowe version. And neither of them featured the prison. It was the 310. In both of those movies, what you'll last see is they're headed out of Contention City, which is a real place, to Yuma on the 310 to Yuma. Now, the original movie with Glenn Ford did have scenes shot here where they got off the train. But that ended up getting edited out of the movie. So that's why the second movie ends the same way as the first movie. So, but it was a great set, and the price was right. And a lot of movies over the years have been filmed here. So if you take a walk in there just to get a feel. This one, they're talking to you.
I married my second wife, Florence. At my trial, I refused to recognize the validity of this law. I called it a mockery, a travesty on justice. But as a good American, I
But again, you
accepted
get
the 6-month
to be in
sentence.
Creepy.
Nothing bad. Superintendent Ingalls recognized me as a leader of men and
block
asked me
in
to
here.
help out
Wow.
with some of the more difficult prisoners. I shall do my time.
That's a
then
small
go back
space.
and live my life as I see fit.
But that doesn't even have anything in it. It's
Well,
so
yeah.
creepy.
In a way, but for the time, you always have to put that in perspective. Now the bunks there, originally one of the things that the prisoners got when they first got here, they got this long sack, and they were supposed to take that sack over to the stable and fill it up with straw. Hopefully mostly straw, but it was a stable, so who knows. Trouble was, the bunks at the time were also made out of wood, so you had the mattress with straw brought from the stable, and then you had the wood. Well, it didn't take long till they got infested with different kind of bugs, and eventually they had to haul out the wooden bunks and burn those, and then the mattresses, instead of being straw from the stable, they were stuffed with cotton, but cotton that had been soaked in kerosene. So no more bug problem, but you're sleeping on a kind of a kerosene smelling mattress.
Yeah. No smoking in there. Yeah.
Yeah, don't smoke.
I don't think that was really much of a problem.
Check out this one. Oh, sorry.
Especially after they started soaking the mattresses and everything.
Bad to see.
Oh man. There's the bunks in here. Wow. Original iron bunk beds. Yeah. Oh, they don't look long enough to me, but
Every quarter, the prison superintendent had to report to the governor all of the transactions, everything that had happened at the prison. So he goes quarter by quarter using those, and then also when new prisoners, they're all by chronological number. So he'll also do stories about each of those prisoners. Now some prisoners, they just came here and did their time, and that was it. So there's not much about them. Maybe you know what they were here for and how long they were here. But other ones, yeah, there was always some additional stories that went along with that. So let's go ahead and wander on. Again, you come back and look over all this stuff, and I encourage you to. A lot of stuff here.
he looks like an ornery character.
You see something like a rat or a scorpion or a rattlesnake or something like that. They're probably not real. This not really the time of year that you run into those. But if they're moving, you better let me know about it.
Oh, he looks mean too. Okay, outside the other courtyard here.
Here's that caliche or clay mountain that I was talking about. That these different cells go into there. The surface of it has been stabilized. This stuff that's kind of like a spray concrete to stabilize it, keep it from wearing away. Because most of this prison, if it wasn't stabilized by more modern means, it wouldn't be good at all. Except for the granite. Boy, that granite's tough.
Just adobe and rocks.
From here, look, you can see that walkway in front of that, the prison cells, and it kind of rocks. That actually kind of outlines what was this outer structure on that. There's a roof over it, and so that was really a hallway, and that's what that sidewalk is. This area here, now that's all modern. That was used as a part of fundraising. You could, for a while, you could
I think it was the Yuma Junior Chamber of Commerce. You could have somebody arrested and bought you. Yeah, that's how they'd raise money.
That's funny.
But the that perimeter there, the outline, that was
The modern world.
the porch itself. Down here is a 5-cell reconstructed iron cage, and then adobe. You have the foundation, and then adobe bricks made up the rest of it to be insulation. And that's another thing too. We get asked all the time, well, how did anybody survive more than a few days? And you look at caves, you look at the granite construction, there's not much better insulation that you could have. So you've got air movement, you've got electric lights, you've got that kind of insulation. Probably wasn't a bad place to be. You're in town in a wooden shack. Probably was worse conditions than up here in some ways. So this is the entrance to the women's yard. I pointed that out, that square that came off the back of the prison. See, we're right here. We're standing outside the women's yard. Now that was sawed off as a part of that bridge and that railroad yard coming. If you're on the outside, right outside on the roadway looking up here, what you'd see is this. 3 look like caves, then the bars here, well, that's a doorway, and that's the doorway into here. This is like a parlor area for the women, and these are what are left in the 3 cells. But the women would be able to spend their time in the parlor area or in the yard, and not have anyone keep them in. And I think when the prison was first built, I don't really think they expected to have women prisoners. This was a tough place for the toughest of the tough. It kind of worked out that way for a while, but in 1878, they got the first woman prisoner. Lizzie Gallagher showed up. She was here for manslaughter. She probably killed some cheating boyfriend, but still, she had served time in other places, probably the county jail, until they figured there was time to send her up here. And they did. She got here, and they didn't know what to do with her. They couldn't put her in with the guys. That wouldn't be a good thing. They couldn't put her in a cell by herself because that would make 5 bunks that they couldn't use. So they ended up putting her in the superintendent's quarters in the storeroom, and the superintendent's wife had to look after her. We don't think that went over really well because, as they point out, Lizzie was only here for 42 days before she got a pardon from the government.
Oh, yeah.
License for murder.
You don't know the guy that you killed. Might have been a public service, who knows? But that was like, I think the superintendent's wife had a lot to do with doing it. Now, we did have one birth here at the prison. Prisoner came here pregnant, and the child was raised here for the first 2 years of her life before both the mom and child got a pardon. So, different stuff, but we only had 29 women prisoners through our whole time. So even with those 3 cells, it was rare that you would have had anything more that all the cells would have been full, or that you would have had more than one person in a cell. There was a real short time where we had 4 women prisoners here. But women prisoners were a lot of trouble. For a long time, we had the only 2 women prisoners that were here. They were always fighting. And ultimately, they ended up spending a night in the dark cell chained together in the cage. They didn't fight anymore after that. But it wasn't something we had a lot of with women prisoners. You can go ahead and take a look in there, and you can see the women prisoners were treated differently. The women prisoners were treated differently. It was used when they filed for pardons for the women. If there was just one woman here, they would include with the governor to the pardon for the governor that there was just one woman here and it was cruel and unusual punishment for her to be here by herself with no one to talk to.
Yeah, I talked to any men.
Way to go. Yeah.
Yeah, here's the women's
Yeah,
cell.
they
Yeah, looks, oh, it's big. Wow, they had a deluxe.
until the hospital was built. This is where they treated the sick or injured. Hey, wonder where that went.
I don't know.
Okay, yeah, we did have people would get sick, people would get injured. With the hospital, when the hospital was built, that actually was the first
Infirmary.
hospital. Well, what the first hospital in the area, and the people could call.
Yeah, he looks pale.
Use the hospital. This right now, it's a tool shed, and some of the tools that were used in the prison at the time are in there. But eventually, I'm pretty sure, because I've looked at pictures and figured out this is actually where the barber shop used to be. Because there was a prison barber shop. In the main museum, they'll see what the issued stuff. There's like a straight razor for shaving. Prisoners didn't get straight razors.
No.
They went to the barber. Okay, now here's the duck shell. Let me get that street away.
The dark cell. Ooh.
Watch your step.
Go ahead. I'm too scared. Okay, we're going into the dark cell. Said there could be bats in there.
We don't know what's in there yet.
Yeah. So I'm just gonna move out to this side so we can get everybody in. And we'll do some talking about what's here or may not be here. You may be surprised.
Hey.
Occasionally, like I said, I came in here one time, there was this big old lizard sitting on my friend's shoulder. I got a picture of that one, that was good. This is all that's left of the cage, but you can tell, this is the shape, but this is the floor of the cage. It was went up about 5 feet. So if you were shorter than 5 feet, you could stand up. If you were taller than 5 feet, you couldn't. And no bed, no padding, no anything. You were just in here. Now that you might think that's pretty cruel and unusual punishment, but it wasn't beating. Your only contact with the outside world would have been that vent hole there. So, okay, now let's try something here. Now we do have, like I say, occasional visitors. Let's see if we got any visitors.
Bats.
Today.
Oh,
there you go.
bats. Oh, yeah, the bats up in there.
When it's cold, they group together like that. So,
Wow.
I was gonna say, humanity is grouped into 3 different groups.
Yeah.
There's one group, when you tell them there's bats in here, they're like, awesome, I can't wait to get in there and see the bats. There's one group, you tell them that there's bats in here, they go, okay, and they'll come in, but when they see the bats, they're gone.
That's that group.
That's my wife.
And then there's one group, you
That's
tell them
okay.
there's bats in here, you couldn't bring them in here in handcuffs. So, but we get folks that are just enchanted with the idea that they get to see bats.
Oh, yeah.
There you go.
Yeah, they're
There they are.
There's our bats.
Get to see it live.
Yeah.
That's cute.
Mostly people were just in here for a few days, maybe some hard cases for a week. The record was 109 days.
Yeah.
And that was a guy that was a particular problem case, and he was always in trouble, always starting fights, and then he was involved in a prison escape. But he was recaptured, brought back, and his punishment was the dark cell. But his punishment wasn't 109 days in a dark cell. His punishment was he had to do 2 things to get out. He had to admit that he had done wrong, and he had to promise not to do it again. 109 days. He really showed the superintendent. Yeah.
Bread and water.
Bread and water, 109 days in the dark. And then he finally, I give up.
He broke
out.
out. Yeah.
I shouldn't have done it. I did wrong. I won't do it again. Okay. Back to population.
All right.
Yeah.
Yeah, he spent the rest of his term. Didn't cause much more trouble. Was eventually released, and he got as far as Lordsburg, New Mexico, and he was jumping a train like a hobo, and he slipped and went under the train. So he only got as far, only just a few days to a week and of freedom, and then he
Wow.
fell under a train. Any questions about the dark cell?
Oh, no.
Okay.
It's
Yeah, you
Just
could say
being there says a lot.
yeah, there is not much, and I don't know if the vets were here when the people were in here, but
Yeah.
they're here now.
yeah.
Yeah.
All right, well, let's go ahead and
They're all part of this.
just watch your step.
Outside of the dark cell. Well, that was fun.
We're from Washington, great every day.
We might go back to
Aren't
no pattern walls on it.
no, well, personally,
Oops, sorry.
one, I don't think that if this was the insane cell that it had a solid door on it, because I can't picture somebody not being insane being stuck in complete darkness in that size room.
Thank you, yeah.
Let's wander over here to the library where you get out.
Look at this insane cell. Go ahead.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
If you weren't insane, you'd probably go insane after a while. Okay. Now we're going into the library. Gotta catch up.
That's an actual picture of the library.
Oh, the library.
It looks like it goes back further, and that's because it did. This goes back, what, 4 rooms, additional rooms, but they ended up needing those rooms for overflow prisoners in the tuberculosis ward. So those got walled off as individual cells, and I'll show you that in the East Yard when we get in there. But this was, it was cutting edge stuff for a prison to,
Yeah.
have books, have
Library.
periodicals, magazines, and then teaching people to read, teaching people to do stuff. And I said, English, Spanish, and English, Spanish, and German were taught here, and people like, well, we can figure Spanish, we can figure English, but why German? Well, the United States back at that time were some very heavily German areas. The Midwest, around the Great Lakes area, very heavy German population. I grew up in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, very heavy German population, but also Texas, parts of Texas today even. German as a common language spoken in areas around San Antonio. If you ever get to visit Fredericksburg, or
Fredericksburg, yeah.
Fredericksburg, just outside of San Antonio. German architecture, great German restaurants, really neat stuff. But that's why it was a common language taught here. Let's go into the nice warm East Yard.
Oh, warm.
Okay.
Bring on the sun.
Now, watch your head as you're cooking in here. It's low, and there's a reason why it's low.
That'd knock you out.
World of difference.
Oh, yeah. Sun warms it up nice here.
There we go. Okay. Real quick, you notice it looks the same on this side, caution low exit. Nope. Okay. The other's down about 2 feet. Well, remember I said that there was a time that this was used as a movie set, pretty regular. There was a movie shot here in the 1950s. It was called The Badlanders, and the leading band was a fellow by the name of Alan Ladd. Not so well known a name now, but he was a big star back at the time. Well, you know how Hollywood is. They want to make all of their stars have to be 10 foot tall. John Wayne was pretty tall. He was about 6 foot, 6'6", as a matter of fact. Alan was not. He was actually quite short. And they figured if they filmed everybody coming in and out of that doorway, you would notice the real difference in height. So they dropped that down 2 feet. So when Alan was going in and out of it, it looked normal compared to everybody else going out in and out of this one.
That's funny.
Now, also, if you see the movie, he's walking with the leading lady, you don't get to see their feet because she's actually walking in a trench. So, yeah, again, nothing new. Hollywood's always trying to make things out. Tom Cruise, not a real tall fella. I haven't met Tom. I have met a number of other Hollywood folks because Hollywood does a lot of movie stuff around here. Our sand dunes on the way to San Diego, those, if you're, let's see, Star Wars, Stargate, any other Flight of the Phoenix, any other time where they needed something to look like the Sahara Desert or a desert planet, it's us down here. But one star that I did meet, it was a real surprise, was Sylvester Stallone. Anybody ever meet Sylvester?
No.
Okay. I was at a hotel and I heard, the Rocky voice.
Yeah.
He was here shooting Rambo 3.
Oh,
And I turned and I had to look down.
Wow.
Oh my goodness. That was the muscles? Oh yeah. Real muscles?
sure.
Oh my goodness. I don't know what they do to make him bigger on screen, but they got to do something.
Movie magic. Yeah.
Annie. But this is the East Yard. This area. The walls have been returned to their 18-foot high, and then the cells here. You can see the first four, a little bit different than the last ones, but these first four, those are the ones that were made out of the library, and then the library was moved to a different area. Now, this gives you an idea. The whole prison would have looked like that, inside and out, plastered over and whitewashed. So that's been maintained and able to be maintained. Same with the walls here, but it gives you an idea, a feeling for what it would have been like in the prison. Yeah, and this time of year it's kind of pleasant to be here. Kind of shorten our discussions in here in the summertime because it's a real solar oven in here. So,
Yeah.
Yeah.
But 1909, the prison closed, and that would have been the end of it, except they needed a place for the kids to meet for high school until they got the new city high school built. And so, starting in 1910, going for the next 4 years till 1914, this was Yuma High School. And it had everything you needed. Now, they didn't meet in the cells, although I'm sure the kids got there. And based on some of the graffiti in some of the cells, they were definitely in there. But you had the hospital was a great place for assemblies and classrooms, and the different other existing places that, they had electricity here. They had running water. They had a pretty good place for a school. So it took 4 years for them to, get the money together and do all the construction. We have currently in our area, we've got 7 area high schools. Yuma High is the oldest, and Yuma High sports teams are the Yuma High Criminals, sometimes shortened to the Crims. They didn't start out that way, but they got teased so much from other schools that those are those criminals from Yuma. They finally they embraced it, and they became the Yuma Criminals and have been ever since. Sometimes we get people that complain about it. They think, oh, what are you doing to those poor kids? You're scarring them for life. If you know any Yuma criminal alumni, they'll fight you for that name. My 2 sons, both Yuma criminals, both went into public safety careers. Just happens. Yeah. But they embraced it to the point where the school has a entrepreneurship program, a marketing program, and they market to the world crimwear. Crimwear, I'm a Yuma criminal, t-shirts, sweatshirts, all kind of sportswear, hats. You can find this stuff at Walmart. and it's also, they take care of all the licensing, they take care of the marketing and the shipping and all that stuff. It's a great program for the kids. So
Learn about business.
yes, we do. Absolutely. Great business class. So after 1914, the prison was abandoned, except for Hollywood would use it from time to time. The adobe walls, unless you keep constant work done on adobe, it melts. It just melts away. That and when that train line was moved up and that end of the prison was torn off, other stuff happened. Like the dining hall was destroyed in the fire. The hospital was destroyed in the fire. The dining hall was rebuilt in 1940 as a part of the New Deal with President Roosevelt, just before World War II, with the idea of it becoming a museum. Not much happened. I mean, of course, we had World War II. We're lucky as much of this survived World War II. What I'm saying is the iron and all the metal products that are still here, because all that stuff would have otherwise gone in prison or in scrap metal drives. And that's what happened to a lot of stuff. A lot of things have managed to find their way back here, but after World War II, though, between the movies in the 30s and 40s and 50s, and then the interstate highway system, people got anxious to come out west and see the Wild West that they've been seeing in movies and TV. And, well, that's when things started to pick up here. And in 1961, this became a state park, and it's been maintained, improvements made ever since then. But 2010, it almost died because the state announced they were closing it. It was going to be closed as a park. The city said, no, that's our prison. It means too much to us. The city took over operation. Now they work it in conjunction with something called the Yuma Crossing Heritage. You sit up. They've got a few paid employees for doing this sort of thing. Most of us are volunteers. We come out and hang out in the 1800s. Later on this month, if any of you are passing through again on January 25th, it's Wild West Days here, so it'll be pretty busy. So, any questions? Now, we do have folks with California backgrounds, right?
Yep.
Okay, for the California backgrounds, there is a place, there's a neighborhood in Yuma, and it's called Okietown. And Okietown, during the Dust Bowl, for those that got good, solid educations in school, during the late 20s and into the 30s, there was a gigantic environmental disaster. Arkansas and Oklahoma and North Texas, years of drought, years of intense heat, turned the topsoil for farming into just dust that blew away. Literally, the dust cloud from that reached as far as Washington, D.C. Far greater than any kind of environmental disasters we've seen. Well, we'll get the final toll in California, I guess. But still, it's the same. This was just a natural disaster and just completely wiped it out. People were fleeing it for their lives. Many of them, or most of them, wanted to head to California, the land of milk and honey. And they wanted to get there, and they'd come through. The place to stop for miles around would have been crossing the Colorado River. The only place you could cross was here at Yuma. Well, California didn't like that very much. And as a result, Los Angeles, the city of Los Angeles, sent city police officers to the mission on the other side of the bridge in California. They set them up there, and they set up what was called the bum blockade. And what they did is to get over the bridge into California, you had to prove that you were a California resident. You had to prove that you had a job waiting for you. Somebody like literally a letter from somebody saying that you're going to start work, kind of thing. Or you had to show you had a certain amount of money to be able to support you there. Otherwise, they would turn you back and not let you into California. It wasn't even a sanctuary state for U.S. citizens back then. Crazy stuff. And I managed to find a wire service photo. This photo is from 1936, including the story about the bum blockade. But as a result, what happened was these people that had everything that they had owned, strapped on this Beverly Hillbilly vehicle trying to get across to California. They were stopped here. They had no other alternatives. So what happened is they went outside the city limits and built a shanty town out there, which became known as Okie Town. Now, over time, they got jobs. They built real houses. Streets were put in. Now, those streets don't match up with some of our other streets, but it was known as Okie Town because that's where the Okies and the Arkies, the refugees from the Dust Bowl, where they migrated to.
Interesting.
I got here first. It was in the 70s. My brother had been here since the 60s, and we knew folks that were still alive they'd come here from that time. None of them anymore, but over time, those immigrants were replaced by the new ones, and it's completely a Hispanic barrio now. To the point when I was a police officer, I'd always have to deal with the Okie Town street gang, drive-by shootings and other stuff like these are bad dudes. Not as bad as some, but worse than others. But occasionally I'd have one in custody, and it's like, what gang? Okie Town.
Oh, yeah.
So you're an Okie? Yeah. You know what an Okie is? I'm trying to convince them that they're identifying as a Midwestern farmer.
Yeah.
It didn't work. They thought I was lying to them. And I said, you really should pay more attention if they even teach that stuff in school, because it does go against some narratives.
Yeah.
So, anyhow, well, enjoy the rest of your stay. I hope that you get a chance. There's about a 10-minute or so video in the library or in the auditorium that kind of covers a lot of this too, but maybe with more pictures and things, and a lot of stories to be told. I only get to tell a few of them. Now let's see, we did have Canadians. Okay, our most famous prisoner is Pearl Hart. And Pearl Hart, most people don't know, Pearl was born and raised in Canada, and then came out west to find her fame and fortune. She didn't find her fame and fortune. She found some other deadbeat to hook up with, and for a while they were rolling drunks for money, and then they decided to rob a stagecoach. They robbed the stagecoach. Pearl dressed as a guy. I guess she was kind of ahead of her time. I don't know. But she dressed as a guy, which was very, very big news at the time. They didn't, they did a good job robbing the stage, but they didn't do a good job escaping. They got lost in the dark, circled around. The posse caught them the next morning where they were asleep, brought them in, and her boyfriend, Joe Boot, was convicted of stagecoach robbery, was sentenced to 30 years here at the Yuma prison. Off he went. Pearl was this cute little girl, and she just flirt with the jury, something horrible. She did have a delayed trial because she talked her way out of the jail once and then escaped, but then got caught again. But
Not good at escaping.
not good at escaping. Well, then Pearl went to trial, and she got acquitted by the all-male jury. There was like too much flirting going on, and they just couldn't, because she's all in her ruffles and and dressed in the turn of the century kind of. They couldn't convict her. They didn't. So the judge was so angry over it because she did exactly, maybe even a little bit more than Joe Boog. But they looked over this case and they go, in the process of it, she stole the stagecoach driver's gun. So they hauled her back in. They charged her with theft. And the new jury, was told, you got to follow the law or you're going to serve her sentence for her. So they found her guilty. She got sentenced to 5 years up here, but by that time, she was known as the bandit queen of the West. The news of the time, the newspapers and sending her telegraph stories, she was known coast to coast as the bandit queen. Now, that Pearl Hart may not mean anything to you folks. Old westerns, movies, TV shows, Death Valley Days, Tales of Wells Fargo, Gunsmoke. She made the name made appearance, but always as this girl in charge of this bunch of outlaws. She was like a female Al Capone. Well, no. You know, she's bullying drunks, probably a prostitute, and then the one stagecoach robbery. But she gets up here, she's known coast to coast. Cosmopolitan magazine, which I don't know if it's related to Current or not, but they sent somebody up here and they did a series of articles on her exploits in the West. Well, considering she didn't have any exploits in the West, they had to make it up. So again, no difference, you know. Hollywood, no difference. Politics, no difference. You know, the news media, no difference. So here she is. She's built up. There's a line of people wanted to meet her. They wanted to get photographs with her. They wanted to do interviews with her. And she was such a pain that the superintendent petitioned the governor. It's like, you got to get this girl out of here. Well, stay warm.
Yeah, thank you. Very interesting. I appreciate it.
Welcome. I hope you get a chance to come back sometime or bring other folks to come visit.
Oh yeah, for sure.
We get a tremendous number of people. Oh
Well, that's about the tour there. That was quite interesting. A little windy, but not too cold, so that was good. On to some new adventures later. Thanks for watching. Now there's some of the vegetable farms down here. They grow lots of stuff down here in Yuma. Guy I talked to here said that they've never had snow. They had hail one time. No snow at all. So a lot of people, retirees, come down here and all that for the weather. It's kind of like weather like in San Diego or something. Going down to the Escapees Park down here in the south of Yuma. Pretty close to the Mexican border here. Lots of lemon trees on the side here. And orange trees. So I'm gonna go ahead and stay the night because I belong to the Escapees Club. Yeah, I'll explain that later, but it's a pretty neat little club. Hit all their different parks across the United States. Most of them are in the south, but it's pretty convenient when you're going down south here.